Hi, my name is Peter.
Hi, I'm Candace. Nice
Hi.
to meet you.
And you need help with calculus?
I do.
Okay.
I'm having like a real problem with this particular assignment. In particular, I'm having trouble with problem number 2, number 4, and 5. So.
Okay. Why don't we start just by refreshing our memory of what a derivative is?
Okay.
Okay. Remember in algebra class, we talked about slopes of lines.
Right.
So if I'm going uphill,
Okay.
my slope is positive.
Right. Okay.
If I'm going downhill, my slope is negative.
Okay.
And then the steeper my line is, that's steep. This is really steep. So my slope goes up.
Okay.
Now the derivative is when we're doing something much more complicated than a line. So now I no longer have a line, but what if I have something like this? So it's not so easy. There I can say the slope of this line is going uphill, it's going uphill, it's going uphill. No matter where I am, it's always going uphill.
Right.
Here I'm going uphill, I'm going uphill, I'm going uphill, but now I'm going downhill.
Okay.
So the slope on a curve is constantly changing. And so that's what we're looking for when we're looking at functions. Instead of saying the slope is a constant 4. Here, the slope is constantly changing. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative.
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to find here. When we're trying to find the derivatives of these, we're trying to find how that slope is constantly changing and moving around.
Oh, that's
Make sense?
interesting. Yes,
Yeah.
it makes sense. It makes sense. Totally.
Okay. So now when I have a function instead of a line, my slope is constantly changing, and so this is what this is going to tell us is how it's changing.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So we want to find the derivative of this function, 5 to the x cotangent of x.
Okay.
So do you remember how to find the derivative of a product?
I don't, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. Remember, your instructor probably told you the derivative of a product is the first function. You've got 2 functions here. This is the first function, this is the second function.
Okay.
You've got the first the derivative of a product of functions is the first function times the derivative of the second, plus the second times the derivative of the first function. So all we're going to do is just rewrite this. Our derivative is just going to be, again, the first times the derivative of the second,
Okay.
plus the second times the derivative of the first.
Okay.
So just rewriting them.
So it'd be like backwards or flip? You mean like 5x?
First,
Yeah.
derivative of the second.
Okay. So then it would be,
Derivative of cotangent.
yes, would be plus.
Derivative of cotangent is, I don't always remember either. Derivative of cotangent is minus cosecant squared. Is that right? Yeah. See, that's why we put these up here, so you can, if you're ever in here and you need help and you can't remember some of the formulas,
Okay.
look up here and there they are.
Awesome.
Sometimes our tutors don't remember. Sometimes I don't remember. Right?
Okay.
So derivative of this
I understand that.
is minus cosecant squared x.
Ah.
First, derivative of the second,
Okay.
plus the second, and I'm just going to rewrite derivative of the first.
Okay. All right.
What's the derivative of 5 to the x?
The derivative of 5 to the x.
Again, if you don't know, you can look.
A few
And
derivatives of 5
your
to the x.
instructor, when you're in class, he may ask you to have these memorized. He may not. So you need to find that out from him and just
Okay.
ask him, do I need to know what the derivative of this is? Do I have to have that memorized? Or are you going to give me, when I go in for my test, will you give me a sheet that has the derivative spelled out?
Right.
And I don't know, because I don't know your instructor, what he requires. But you need to know that before you go in for the test.
Okay.
So just go in next class, ask him if he wants you to memorize it.
Okay.
Then my suggestion to you, if he says to you, you have to have that memorized, my suggestion is you come in here again and write down some of these formulas
Okay.
that you see up here,
Okay.
because you'll be required to know them. And if he gives them to you, and if he puts a page on the test where he tells you, then don't worry about it, just know where to look. Yeah, you're just applying these formulas.
Oh,
But
neat.
again, it is pretty straightforward. But you need to know these formulas. If you don't know these formulas, I mean, you don't even know where to start.
No,
So-
that's what I think made it so confusing. So, knowing.
And that's what I was saying. What I do when my instructor is giving me a bunch of formulas to memorize, I just write them on 3x5 cards, like maybe the name of the formula in the front,
yeah.
and then the formula in the back.
Yeah.
And just, 3 times a day, I pull out those 3x5 cards and just go through them until I know them, so that anyone asks me, if you walked up to me on the street and said, what's the derivative of a quotient, I could go, oh, it's v du minus u dv over v squared. And I would know it like that.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I should do that.
but if you ask me the first time I see it, I won't know it. So again, just write it on a 3x5 card, keep
Okay.
it with you 3
Yeah.
times a day. And I'm
I'll
not talking
transfer
about,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about, again, 5 hours a day going through your note cards. Just 3 times a day, go through like 5 of them, and you'll know it before too long.
Wow, I thought this was gonna be way harder. I feel like I totally understand algebra. Okay, so that's awesome. So if that's the answer, then 5.
Okay, let's do one more.
Thank you.
5 is going to be, we learned the product rule, we learned the quotient rule. 5 looks like the quotient rule. You've got a function on top, you've got a function
But
on the
this-
bottom. But we can simplify that. What we want to do here is he's kind of trying to trick you to try to get you to use the quotient rule. But the quotient rule is pretty difficult. Let's not overthink this. Let's make it as easy as possible. And let's go back to our rules of exponents.
So it's x, 3x.
I'm just going to write it.
Okay.
And let's, instead of using the quotient rule, let's just simplify this. The square root of x can be written as x to the 1/2 power.
Okay.
Same thing.
Right.
So
right.
when I take the derivative of this, I'm just going to subtract exponents. 2 minus 1/2 would be 3/2. 1, just looking at the exponents, 1 minus 1/2 is just going to be 1/2. 0, because there's no exponent here. We can call x to the 0
Is the
1.
1, yeah.
0 minus 1/2 is negative 1/2.
Oh, neat.
So what we've done is we've just transformed this into a different function. Instead of having to use the quotient rule now, I can just use my straight power rule, where the derivative, and you may not remember this, but when I just have,
What is that?
that means that's another way of writing derivative.
Oh.
Just put the prime there,
Wow.
and it's the same thing as writing the d over dx that we saw a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Dear.
Just lots of different ways to write the same thing.
Okay. It's important to understand.
The power rule says multiply the exponent times the coefficient and lower this by 1. And it's the easiest way to find a derivative. That's why I changed it from that, because that would be difficult. That's quotient rule, and boy, messing around with the v du minus the u dv over v squared, it's going to take me forever.
Right.
This I can do right now.
Okay.
Just straight the 3/2 times 3. 3 times 3 is
9.
9. Lower that by 1.
Okay, so that would be 3. Oh, okay. 3 times 3 in its place is 1. So it's okay.
1/2 times 8.
1/2 times 8 is.
4. Lower by
I mean,
1.
I know that, but still.
Lower by 1.
Okay. So it would
Negative.
have
Negative 1/2. Negative times a negative.
is positive. So you'd be plus. Yeah.
1/2 times 11. 11 halves.
Okay.
And we're going to lower by 1.
Minus 3 over 2.
There's your derivative.
Oh.
And see how fast we did that rather than
That
having
was
to go through.
super fast. Wow, that was much faster.
So don't overthink these. If you can change it to a simple polynomial rather than 2 functions sitting on top of each other,
Yeah.
do the simple polynomial.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think the math is the easiest part to grasp, and sometimes learning the terminology and knowing what it is for me is the hardest part. So when you tell me what all this stuff means, it makes more sense to me. So then I know what to understand. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, awesome.
Derivatives are going to be important. It's going to be the whole first half of Calculus 1. So you just really need to learn your derivatives. It's something that's going to stay with you. It's just a really important concept in calculus. So we really want to learn it. That's why he's giving me so many derivatives, because we really need to master this concept.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's amazing. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much
Sure.
for your help. I really appreciate it. It was very nice to meet you.
We're here
Thank
8 to
you.
7 Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5 on Fridays.
Oh, awesome.
But you can
'Cause
be
I'm
in
gonna
here all
need
day.
help.
Yeah, and we'll give you as much help as you
I
need.
need more help, I think. But that's amazing. So thank you so much for telling me that. And I'll definitely close on some cards and get going on this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Good luck in calculus.
Thank you.